Good afternoon and welcome to EdTalks, hosted by Campus Consortium. As some of you know, EdTalks is to facilitate thought leadership in the education community. In today's session, part of our 2020 series, we've asked our guest speaker to share with us his thoughts on what will education look like in 2020 and how will information technology evolve to meet the needs of students, faculty, and the administration. I would like to extend a warm welcome to today's guest speaker, Dr. Curtis Carver, Vice President of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, also known as UAB. We are very honored that Dr. Carver has given us the opportunity to have him speak in today's session. Dr. Carver leads a team of dedicated professionals that support UAB's mission by providing world-class IT solutions with a focus on innovation, agility, and cost efficiency. A senior leader in higher education information technology, Dr. Carver came to UAB as the Vice Chancellor and Chief Information Officer from the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia. Having previously held key leadership positions at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, he's earned his bachelor's degree in computer science from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and his master's degree and doctorate in computer science from Texas A&M University. Throughout his career, he has received numerous national and international honors and awards for military teaching, research excellence. Dr. Carver is a frequent keynote speaker and has published extensively as well. Dr. Carver, we have a little over 500 attendees today from across the world. On behalf of our team and the attendees, thank you for taking the time to share with all of us your thoughts and insights around the future of technology and education. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the platform over to you.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to EdTalks. I'm really going to talk about 4 different themes today. I'm going to talk about the idea of pace and how that pace is increasing and what we can do in higher education to respond to that change in the environment. I'm going to talk also about how can we grow, both from a student and a faculty and a research and an endowment perspective, and again, the role that IT plays as a partner in helping higher education and higher education institutions grow. Talk about that core component of learning within our environment and how we can enhance that and what technology changes have occurred recently or have been rediscovered that will allow us to educate and inspire the next generation of leaders of the world. And then finally, talk a little bit about balance. When you talk about pace and grow, how do you do that and then balance everything out? So if I could, let's go ahead and get the next slide, please. All right, so the starting with this idea of pace, today is going to be the slowest day you ever have. That means we have to prepare for tomorrow. And it means that we live in a time of exponential change. Whereas if you take 30 steps linearly, you're going to get across the room. If you take 30 exponential steps, you're going to actually walk to the moon. And so the question becomes, how do you thrive during a period of linear steps and linear thinking to a period that we all recognize of pace that is exponential and transformational? Next slide, please. So when we talk about this idea of exponential pace, here's just a few snippets that indicate the change in the growth of knowledge. This idea that a week's worth of a New York Times article has more information in it than an entire lifetime in the 18th century. The growth in searches, the growth in terms of just new data being created out there. And the question is, how do you respond to this? How do you deal with this at an institutional level? And the quote or the subtext there, this idea that in exponential times, if you're improving your performance incrementally, you're falling behind exponentially. And so that means you've got to go back and look at what things can you do that allow you to dramatically transform your operations and maintain that pace. And so let's put a face on this. Let's look at Sarah. If we could, next slide, please. So Sarah's one of the researchers here at UAB. She's researching Parkinson's disease and aging, and she needs access to high-performance computing to do that type of research. If you go back and look, I started at UAB in June of 2015, and at that point, it was going to take close to 11,000 days to run her algorithms on our existent research computer. For those of you who are quick at math, that's about 30 years. Now, I haven't met Sarah. I'm just going on her picture, but Sarah might not actually be 30 years old. And I suspect that Sarah doesn't want to wait 30 years for the results of her algorithms to run. And I think those folks that are suffering from aging and Parkinson's disease don't want to wait 30 years for that problem to be solved. And so we made a series of investments. We did it the old-fashioned way. I put on my faculty member's hat, and we went out and applied for a grant. We actually competed for the grant, and we won the grant to increase the performance of our high-performance computer. And so we took that 30-day or 30-year window to work on Parkinson's disease and shrunk it to 3 years. So, you know, well played, but doesn't count. 3 years is still too long. And again, we did the same thing. We went back out, and this time I went to the local deans and talked with them and begged and borrowed, and they put some money forward because they were forward thinking. And we were able to shrink that 3-year timeline for working on these problems down to 30 days. Now we're getting to a time period that Sarah can work in. From there, we made some additional enhancements and optimizations to the high-performance computer, and we started using more and more graphic cards because the type of work that Sarah was using performed quite well with the parallel processing and the dual buffering that graphics cards provide. We were able to cut that this month from 30 days to 18 days. By September, we'll get it to 2 days. And so this idea over a very short period of time, less than, well, right at about 2 years, being able to move from 30 years to run a set of algorithms to solve a pressing problem to 2 days is illustrative of the pace that we need to create in our campuses at our universities that allow us to do the innovation and solve these pressing problems that are facing us. Next slide, please. So let's look at this for a second from a faculty perspective. Let's go down to that ground roots level of that faculty member. The faculty members are already working around the clock. They have a daunting series of tasks that they need to accomplish. And if you sat in on the last of the EdTalks, we had a speaker from the University of Texas at Austin talk about the myriad of different tasks facing the faculty members. So the idea that we're just going to load more things on faculty members' plates is the wrong answer. It's the wrong approach. And so what I'm seeing here at UAB, what I'm seeing across the United States is a different approach to handling this pace. Next slide, please. Instead of going and looking at adding more stuff to it, the question becomes, what can we automate and take off of our faculty members' plate so that they can focus on more value-added tasks? What things can we integrate so that we provide a more holistic solution to the problem that the faculty member or the task that the faculty member is trying to achieve? And then what things can we self-service? All right, so let me give you some examples of this. And these are all real-world examples that have occurred. So if you go to a normal university and the faculty member is teaching using the learning management system and using the grading system within that system. They've got their grade book there at the end of the semester. They've got to open the learning management system in one window, open the student information system in another window, and then for each of their students very carefully either copy or retype the grade in. This seems like a tremendous waste of time, and it also seems like it would be error-prone. And so what we ended up doing at our institution is we just built a button and banner that allows the faculty member to push it. It automatically imports all the grades in, and then the faculty member can check and make sure that the grades went across correctly. But this idea of using faculty members as typists rather than taking the time to build a simple button that allows them to automate that in is a simple example of this. In the United States, for those who are receiving federal aid, we as faculty members have to go back and verify that they're actually attending class to receive that financial aid. It's called Title IX verification. And then normal university, if we have faculty members in the webinar, you just get a series of emails saying, please go in and do this so that we can update the federal government on who's attending and who should get money. And the other part of this is if the faculty don't do that, at most institutions, the institution has to pay. You don't really find out until the very end of the semester when the instructor fails the student who never came to class anyway, that the faculty member didn't fill out the form. So there's no accountability with that system. And again, if you think about this, if you're teaching the class within a learning management system, the learning management system knows how often the student has logged in, how much time they've spent, what content, what their performance is on assessments. And so when it comes to Title IX verification or financial aid verification, why are we having the faculty members enter that in from scratch? Why not have the learning management system make a recommendation that says, this is who we think have given indications that they're active and performing well in the course, and here's who's not active and performing well in the course. Let me give you a third example. We often have students that take courses at other institutions, or they try to transfer credit into that institution. And again, if you go back just a couple of years ago, and in many institutions still today, that transfer articulation process involves a human being where a faculty member or department chair is sitting down and looking at the syllabus and the curriculum associated with that course to make a judgment call. Do you transfer that in or not transfer that in? And every single student, even if it's the same course from the same institution and they've transferred those credits in countless times before, you've got a human in the loop. And in my previous role, we went in and automated that entire process. We allowed the institution and allowed the faculty to still be in charge and to still have control over that process, but to automatically articulate whatever their decisions are to similar students that are coming in under the same curriculum and under the same, course structure. So again, in those three examples where I've talked about transferring grades and I've talked about Title IX verification and I've talked about transfer articulation, those are all things that can be automated and taken off the plate of the faculty member so that they can focus on changing the world, on educating and inspiring the next generation of leaders in that world. Next slide. Some other examples, if you look at this, faculty members have to go out and they have to build websites and maintain a curriculum vitae, and every single year provide data back to support their performance evaluation. And those things are all coming from really common data sources that could be integrated together. And so the course teaching schedule of the faculty members, we at an institution know it's actually in Banner. The students that they're sponsoring and serving as mentors for, we know it's out there in the student information system. The research grants that they're winning, the institution knows it's in the research administration system. The publications, we don't know, but there are actually services that will crawl the web and find those and then bring them back so that the faculty member can validate or not validate that those are in fact publications by that particular faculty member. And once we have that common data that we've automatically pulled, the faculty member has not had to do anything, we can then template that data so that it automatically flows into a performance evaluation form, or it automatically flows into a curriculum vitae, or it automatically flows into a website that the faculty member can use. And again, freeing them up so that they can focus on their disciplinary expertise instead of being very highly paid typists and retyping the same information in 3 different forms. The screenshot that you're seeing there is the system that we use here at UAB to automate this process, and we're now beginning to take this beyond the generation of, we now do about 40 or 50 forms, but take that beyond and instead say, can we template out research applications, or at least portions of that, so that there's boilerplate language that allows them to not worry about those components? Can we engineer the structure of the environment so that, again, those things are components that they don't have to worry about as they're going and trying to change the world and educate students? The other thing that I wanted to talk about, just in terms of this idea of pace and how do you take things off, and we've used faculty members as an example. I've talked a little bit already about this idea of a supercomputer and moving from an era of scarcity of resources to an era of abundance. Let me give you a couple of other examples that perhaps will resonate with you. We do a tremendous amount of genomics and a tremendous amount of trans-species transplant research here at UAB. And so just imagine that world-class genomic engineer or genomic scientist out there, and they get a message that says, yo, stop changing the world. Stop figuring out genomics. You need to focus on something really important like your email quota, because, buddy, you're almost out of space, and so you're just going to have to move some things into archive. That's crazy. We've got these highly paid faculty members, researchers, and scientists. They need to focus on changing the world. And so we move to just unlimited email. And when you go back and look at, and again, I'm the CIO of the organization, 95% of my users are way below their quotas. And there are about 5 of them that are close, and my IT staff can very easily manage those 5% and move them to bigger buckets so that they have unlimited email. We did the same thing with storage. Our faculty and researchers don't need to manage that. We just offer unlimited cloud-based storage. I've had faculty members now for about 15 months try to break the unlimited part of that. And again, they're dealing with large genomic packages, so they get lots of ammunition to try, and they haven't broken it yet. But this idea of they've got better things to do than manage storage. Let them go and do that. I would argue the same thing occurs when you start looking at mobile apps. I think the days of monolithic mobile apps are gone. We have a mobile app. It has the equivalent of unlimited roles, which means I have the equivalent of unlimited mobile apps, because I can put a person in a different role and then they get a different interface with different functionality and different tiles, and those things automatically load as they're kind of going about their business. And so this ability to tailor and personalize and provide business value to that individual user. So if I've got first-year, postdocs, I can give them a mobile app, and I can turn it on very quickly. And if I've got those students that are in a particular cohort, build a mobile app for them, and do this very, very quickly. So this idea of abundance, instead of in the previous mobile app, very monolithic, 18 months to change anything, very hard to get things done. This one, boy, we're moving along. And then finally, that last example in the middle there is this idea of digital signatures and electronic or paper-based workflows. So we've entered into an unlimited contract that allows us to take any workflow, any paper-based process that is driving people crazy and allow them to automate that workflow, to create a digital repository for the artifacts that come out of that workflow, to store it in unlimited storage, and to go about changing their world. And so rather than IT controlling where things are going to go, it's this idea of let's co-author or influence this and create an opportunity so that we can go out and look at those things that drive faculty members and researchers and students crazy and then fix those issues. And then the last example, at least on this slide, this idea as we talk about pace, because your pace changes when you don't have to worry about these things and you're not sitting around waiting for something to happen, as we've moved from where at our institution we effectively had 5 gigabits per second of service to now we've got 100 gigabits, and it's dual homed and it never goes down, and right now my faculty can't fill it all, which is good, and we're going to keep it that way so that we stay ahead of what the faculty demand is. So as you're looking for where education is going and you're looking between now and 2020, I think part of that conversation is this idea that the pace is going to increase, but the resourcing is going to increase as well. And the focus has to be on what can you automate, what can you self-service, what can you template, and you have to do it on a daily basis to rapidly experiment and rapidly change and rapidly move forward. So what this leads to is where we started, at least this part of the conversation, this idea that the pace of change will never be as slow as it is today. Today's going to be your slowest day. Tomorrow's faster. You've got to come up with a mechanism to create capacity. You need to be able to create that capacity for researchers and faculty members and students and administrators. And so it leads to this opportunity to what can I automate today? What can I self-service today? What can I template today that dramatically increases my ability to deliver results and create a competitive advantage for that institution? In creating that competitive advantage, I would argue there are really only 3 ways to do that, and that's revenue growth, process innovation, or cost efficiency. And so you've got to look at ways that you can create that business value within the organization. And then this last bit, the last bullet here, may be more aligned with IT now, but in the future perhaps it will spread beyond IT. If people are your most precious resource, and for most IT organizations, 50 to 70% of their budget is people, and you've got this pace and this ability to respond to a exponential or transformational environment, that means you're going to be constantly reorganizing, constantly realigning those resources. It means you're constantly training people onto what's coming next and where you're moving. And so it really applies across all resources, people, space, time, and money. I'm focusing on the people one because that's hard to wrap your head around. I've been in organizations where they're like, we've never realigned, we've never reorganized, we're not aligned with our strategic plan right now. I believe that's got to change. You've got to have your people aligned with relevant services to customers. And in that case, from the IT perspective, that's faculty, students, and researchers. As faculty members, you've got to be aligned to what the disciplinary demands are, and that means you've got to think about how you do that and how you retrain people or realign people to address different concerns. And so I think this brings me to a close for talking a little bit about pace. It's this idea that education is going to be different. Your technology organizations are going to be transforming. It will help grow the organization, but part of that is a pacing question as we kind of go forward. And again, I'll give you some examples of how you can automate and how you can template and how you can self-service different components of this. if you don't have all of your undergraduate courses in the learning management system, you should consider that. Why? Well, because if you have all the courses in one place, first of all, you're not running redundant services. Second of all, for the leading candidates in the learning management system space, it becomes very easy to push one button as a student and see your integrated schedule of all the 6 or 7 courses that you're taking, and to see all the assessments that are required on those 6 or 7 courses, and to move it to your cell phone. So at UAB, we have all of our undergraduate classes in the learning management system, at least to the point that their course syllabus is there. That creates the opportunity for our students to download their schedules into their cell phone and to have all of their assessments and understand when quiz 1 and when the midterm is and when the final exam is going to be. Instead of having to jump between different websites and jump between some instructors who issue it in paper and some instructors who issue it verbally. And, there's been some argument, well, that adds value. I don't think it does. I would argue it doesn't add value. What adds value is graduating students and putting all of their courses in one location, or at least when the assessments are due. It's a great step forward to generating a higher retention rate and a higher graduation rate. Providing early feedback in the course of whether the student is successful or not is incredibly helpful, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we talk about growing the enterprise. Doing frequently asked questions, and I'll give you 2 examples. When I was a faculty member at a previous university, I'm a computer scientist by trade, so we were teaching introductory programming languages. And as part of an experiment, we actually wrote our own compiler, and we captured all of the programming errors that our students were making. And then we went back and we changed the compiler so that there were very customized messages that were going back to the students based on what they were seeing in the classroom and then the errors they were making in the programming. And so this idea of being able to intervene and to allow them to correct mistakes simply, of allowing them to ask questions and provide immediate feedback because you just built it into the compiler or the tool that they were using. For any of the faculty members out there worldwide that are in the call right now or used to be, the students always ask about their evaluations. So self-service it. Build a quick YouTube video that you talk about the assessment and the evaluation and allow them to access it when they want to access it. Tell them how they can do well. Provide your grading sheet through a rubric so that, again, they can prepare for that. And I'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later on. The other component that's going to be different is this idea of personalization. Even back in the 90s, as the web was becoming the web, there were early experiments based on adaptive interfaces, on learning styles, adaptive testing, and other components. There were experimentation that continues to this day with serious gaming. And those things continue to be relevant. They just have not been fully exploited. And I think we're beginning to get to that point where they are going to be more useful, even to the point of adaptive text, that you're getting different text based on what your needs are at that particular point or your demonstrated performance. And so we're in a brave new world where things are going to be different. There is a competitive advantage for those who can make that adaptation, and there's a competitive disadvantage for those who cannot. As we started this presentation, my previous role was as the Vice Chancellor for the Board of Regents for the University System of Georgia. So Georgia, back in 2009 when I started there, had 36 universities. When I left in 2015 to move back to a campus, it did not have 36 universities. It's now down to 27 universities, and there are going to be fewer universities, I believe, in the future within Georgia. And it's not because enrollment's not growing. Enrollment is growing. It's because there's not a competitive advantage to maintaining all of these different universities, each with its own president, each with its own chief information officer and chief academic officer and chief HR officer and so on and so forth. None of the campuses closed during this consolidation. what they did is they got rid of redundant IT systems and redundant administration, and they put students at the center of that conversation and said, how do we create a competitive advantage for them so that we have higher graduation rates, higher retention rates, and we have some economies of scale in offering higher education. All right, so I've talked quickly about this idea of pace that's occurring within the higher education, and I think most of us feel that. Our days are filled and busy, and we're overloaded with information, and I've talked about some practical ways that we're using to address that. Let's now go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about this idea of growing, because that's another component. It's this idea, there was a period of time where IT leaders were focused on cost efficiency and standardization or control as their principal task, and it's really changed in the last couple of years where IT, both in the corporate world and in the educational world, is principally focused on growth. How do I grow revenue at the institution? What things can I do practically from an IT perspective that creates student success, faculty or researcher success, or changes in my endowment or advancement fund? So the idea here is, as you're growing revenues, the way you do that is by empowering greatness in others, unleashing their full potential, making sure that we're maximizing the use of their time. I would argue you're trying to create agents of innovation everywhere and empower them with the right tools, as I talked about that unlimited digital signature component. There are many other examples like that where you're giving them the tools to do really great things. What you've got to do, though, is empower them and then hold them accountable for that greatness. Next slide, please. So let's look at two pictures, both of which have real challenges associated with them. And not part of the bio, but I'm a clinical professor at Georgia State University. I actually teach each year, and so about 2 every semester for 3 semesters. And as you look at these pictures, what's wrong with this? And so let me give you some orientation. As you look at the picture on the left, Pell Grant is the name of the federal grant in the United States that we give low-income students, or students that come from families with low income. And as you can see, there's a direct correlation. The higher your Pell Grant rate, i.e. the higher the percentage of students at your university that have low income, the lower your graduation rate is. Now, the good news is Georgia State is not on that line. Georgia State's actually off the line and substantially above that line. But there's something wrong with this picture. Shouldn't aptitude, capacity, intellect be the principal driver of whether you're successful in college, not income? And look at the picture on the right. The picture on the right, again, looks at the United States. It's another slide I pulled as being a clinical professor there at Georgia State University, and you can see the sources for it. But look at the change between 1970 and 2013 in terms of obtaining a bachelor's degree, graduating by the age of 24. And it's split out by income group. So if you're in the top quartile of income, life looks pretty good. Your graduation rate went from about 40% to 77%. Well done over, that 43-year period. But look at the other 3 quartiles. If you're not in the top quartile, you're effectively flat. And if you're in the bottom quartile, you went from 6% to 9% graduation rates. We can't continue as a civilization to discount 3/4 of the human capital out there by setting up a system that does not allow where income is the principal determinant that you're going to graduate from college, because intellect is not it's not solely tied to what income level you're in. And so there's some challenges with this, and there are lots of different approaches out there that can help you move those things forward, and I'll talk about a couple of those. Using predictive analytics to figure out whether a student is going to be successful or not, and steering them, and especially first-time college students, to the right major is don't know. They don't have a family network, if they're a first-time college student, to fall back on and ask those questions. Using that so that you have intrusive advising, and I'll show you some examples of that in just a minute. Using intelligent agents that fire automatically on the behalf of the faculty member. I use those myself to increase engagement. Changing the faculty reward structure. All right, now we're talking dangerous talk, but changing the reward structure of faculty members so it's tied back to student success. Moving things 100% online, I talked about that. Micro grants make a big difference, and I'll talk about that in just a second, this idea that it really takes a small amount of money in some cases for a student to drop out of college. And then finally, looking at changing the norm. My previous boss, when I was in the state of Georgia, would often quib, do we really need 9,000 unique versions of English 101 or English composition? Can we get by with 5 really good ones instead of 9,000 completely independently developed versions of English 101? And I'm not picking on English. I'm just saying, is that really the right model for going forward, and are we serving the right population when we generate those variances? Next. So as we talk about growing and this idea that we've got to reach all income groups, and that will help us grow the institution, part of that also is measuring what is out there. Do you have wait lists installed as part of your system? Do you give more choices? Can you predict which faculty you're going to need in upcoming semesters because you're running the data ahead to predict rather than the section just fills, and whenever the section fills, that's it. And again, based on my the current experience as a faculty member, you run into that a lot where you get email from faculty going, I've got to have this class for graduation. There are no other sections left. I applied the first day the course was offered, but it was already filled. And again, those are opportunities where we're not using analytics and we're not building in the course selection flexibility so that people can graduate on time and they can graduate within 4 years. And my hope is by 2020 that we've worked this out. This is an example of one that we used here at UAB. As you're doing this and you're opening those new sections, are you hiring more adjuncts to teach those, or are you putting your most experienced faculty to teach those and drive? The message on the left is not my favorite message. It's actually from a school of business. But within the 2 current learning management systems that are pretty dominant, at least here in the United States. One has an explicit capability called intelligent agents that allow automatic engagement, automatic messaging to occur to engage the students and make sure they stay on track. And if you think about it, the areas that you want to engage them in are, 3 areas that are pretty straightforward. Are they logging in and consuming course material in a meaningful manner? And if not, you want to send them a note and say, you're not going to pass the course if you're not reading the material, doing the quizzes, and consuming the content. And so the intelligent agent engages them, and the messages I use are a little less Spartan than this message, and instead get to what's going on in your life. Why are you not coming to class, or why are you not logging into the learning management system? And again, it's an intelligent agent. It fires automatically when a certain number of days have passed. If the students do really well on a performance assessment, a quiz, a midterm, a final, then the system automatically sends them a congratulatory note that I wrote. Now, I wrote the message at the beginning of the semester, but the system automatically fires and sends the note. If they do poorly, they get a different note that provides prerequisite material, and they send it back. And the students almost inevitably email me back. They actually think the intelligent agent's pretty funny in terms of the verbiage it uses. It's not me, it's the intelligent agent. But this idea of engagement and forming connections, again, this takes a task off of the faculty member, drives student success, allows the institution to grow by growing the retention and retainment of those students and growing. Next slide is going to talk a little bit about when do you tell students to change their majors. So again, this is from Georgia State where I teach, and it's got 3 courses. And just think about this at your host institution. If your students in an introductory course to any of these 3 disciplines got an A, obviously you're going to tell them to continue in that major. If they got a B, you'd probably tell them to continue in that major. And if they got a C, which is the satisfactory grade, you would tell them to continue in the major. But when you actually look at the underlying data, I'll start on the right, music theory. If you got a C in music theory, you have a 12.5% chance of graduating with that major. So we know at the first introductory course, at the completion of the first introductory course, you have a less than 1 in 8 chance of graduating. Well, you have exactly a 1 in 8 chance of graduating. They should change their major, or they should at least be advised that their chances are 1 in 8. Is there something going on in their life that's going to change in the future and increase that percentage, or perhaps is there a better major for them? Looking at the middle one, the one on politics, they have a 1 in 4 chance if they get a C in that class. Well, if they have a 1 in 4 chance, don't the students deserve to know that they've only got a 1 in 4 chance? Is it ethical to take their money knowing that they're most likely going to fail? Or should we move them to a major that they have a greater aptitude for and a greater chance of success? It's a conversation about, as we're looking at growing the institution, we've got to remove all of these barriers to success that exist out there. Applications at my host institution at UAB 2 years ago, we did not draw blood. We did not require a urine sample. We just came awfully close for them to apply to the institution or even to do a campus visit. A campus visit took 17 steps. These are people that want to give us money and attend our university and graduate from us. 17 steps just to visit the campus. And the same with the campus application process. You had to have a username, and you had to have a password, and you had to have all this other stuff that's not really germane. Do we have students out there that are willing to give us full tuition at the institution? Let's say it's $10,000 a year. And we're going to block them from registering for classes because they owe $25 on a parking ticket or they owe $4 on a library book. That doesn't make sense. We've got to go back and relook those components and figure out, how do we automate self-service? How do we template that process? How do we have micro grants that allow us to give a grant and allow them to register and pay that back? Again, Georgia State has done a great job of setting that up. It's incredibly popular with donors and allows you to grow the institution and grow your graduation rates and move things forward. Look at summer classes. Lots of students like to take classes at another institution over the summer because they're back home. When you're looking at that scenario, do you really need to make them go through a full application process because they're just trying to take one summer class? And again, in my previous role as the Vice Chancellor for the state of Georgia, we had 36 universities. We all shared a common board, yet we were forcing students at a sister institution to go through a full application process to take summer classes. We're treating them as if they were aliens. And so, again, that doesn't lead to student success. That doesn't lead to growth. And I think what you'll see over the next 3 to 4 years in higher ed is this ability to rationalize those things and try to remove them. We have to automate research grants along the way. We have to automate research grants along the way as well to template, virtualize, and provide a digital Bill of Rights for those students. So this idea that if you look at a T32 grant, I can't do the whole grant, but I can automate 60% of that. So think about Sarah and remember Sarah as we're moving forward so that Sarah is empowered to do great. The last bit is don't forget about that personal connection of advancement and donor giving. How can we harness our graduates, our parents, our friends, our grateful patients, community leaders, all those.
Dr. Carver, did we lose you?
I'm still here. Guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, somebody said they couldn't hear me. So the idea of attracting and leveraging advancement and donor opportunities is a final way to grow the institution. Next slide, please. We can enable enrollment growth. We can grow that advancement functionality. Again, let me give you a quick example, that idea of unlimited mobile apps and being able to deploy that and then focus that on specific roles. For at least in the United States and other parts of the world, location-based computing actually works. Urban Spoon and Yelp and other components work. We know where people are. We can use that to deliver different services so that when a donor shows up on campus or shows up at a sporting event, we can go greet them, we can talk with them, we can engage with them. The other component of this, and again, I'll share you a story from here at UAB. In our particular case, the donors, our advancement office, when they called it, routed through my switch, and then my switch would anonymize the number. And so the folks they were dialing would get a call from an anonymous number. And I don't know about you, but I don't even pick up the phone if I get a call from an anonymous number. And so it only took about 15 minutes to fix it. I mentioned it to my switch guys. They immediately go, well, nobody's asked. Well, it had been that way for 6 years. And so what ended up happening is instead of 2 people a week giving back to the institution, we went to 2 people every 15 minutes giving back to the institution. And so there are mechanisms to use IT to grow the organization and to really deliver new services to the organization. All right, let's go forward. I've talked about this idea of creating a competitive advantage for the institution and different ways of doing that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this so that we can finish up and create some time for at least a couple of questions. This idea of using intelligent agents for attendance and performance and participation. If you teach, you know that the students are always going to ask about assessments. So flip that conversation. Make assessments a mentor-mentee relationship. Who says midterms have to be a one-time event and has to be this high-crisis event? Make it a mentor-mentee relationship. In my class, they can submit the midterm as many times as they want. I'll grade it as many times as they want. They can see my grade sheet. It's a meaningful midterm. It really tests their knowledge. And before you ask, the course average is 80%. It's not like everybody gets an A+ when you do this. Folks perform, and other folks don't perform. And the folks who don't perform at least appreciate that it was their fault, that they were given every opportunity to do well. But what it also leads to is folks will submit their midterm 5 different times and get better at it and understand it. And so it's a different paradigm of kind of looking at how we can do education. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention beyond this master-mentee is it doesn't all have to be done at the college level. One of the most exciting things we're doing right now is called Innovate Birmingham, where we're partnering with 15 other partners to educate 925 disconnected youth that are between 17 and 26 years old. Some of those folks have 4-year college degrees. They just can't get jobs with that particular college degree. So we're training them, we're moving them into IT jobs, they're going through a workshop experience. It's currently funded with a $6 million grant. But what's most exciting is we've got a corporate sponsor that's come in and said, we want to do this too. We want to do it within a computer security space and train disconnected youth to work in this field. And we think we can do it. And the salary is life-changing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and finish up this presentation. The last bit is this idea that we have to balance our work and our life. When I started 30 some odd years ago, when I went home, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a laptop computer. I was disconnected, and my wife and I had our daily activities with the dog. Now, 30 years later, I've got 3 kids, still got the same wife and a different dog, but the pace has changed, and balancing that work life is going to become increasingly important because the pace isn't going to slow down. All right, so with that, I think I've got control still. They're going to type those into the box, and I'm going to try to answer. So here's a question. Is it accurate to say that the advent of technology will cause a new look at the Carnegie unit? I've got to scroll down. I assume they're referring to the Carnegie unit classification. I think the answer is yes. I think you're going to relook Carnegie units. I think or Carnegie classifications of units. I think you're going to have to relook, and I think there are actually some serious relooks of even something more foundational, which is credit hours. Is credit hours or competency the real measure? Can we give credit for life experiences that make sense? And again, I'll give you a personal example. Both my son and I were deployed to a war zone during our life, and my son was a medic during that time. Yet when he returned to the United States, none of that time as a combat medic counted at a college level. He definitely had a tremendous amount of military training, but it didn't count. And so I think there's some fundamental questioning within the higher education of what counts, what doesn't count. Does the Carnegie system continue to work in its current format, or is that going to change? And it has an impact. It really does, because certain providers of higher ed solutions base how much they charge you on what your Carnegie category is. The last bit is credit hours really the best mechanism? I got another question here. Do you have any suggestions for funding possibilities for implementing some of the new technologies? Well, I think I would suggest that there are 3 mechanisms for going forward that I teased out during the presentation. One of which is go out and apply for grants and be relentless in forming partnerships to go out and look at what money is currently out there. Second, be entrepreneurial and go to your organizational leaders, not at the president level, but perhaps at the peer level, and try to sell them on the idea and trying to crowdsource or crowdfund, that idea. Some of the enhancements that we've had in research, computing, and networking have been crowdfunded. Didn't mention it, but the first day I took over as a CIO, we turned on a crowdsourcing site. And that crowdsourcing site allowed us to raise funds, or not raise funds, but solicit community support for different projects. Then we could take those back to central administration and get funding that way. So I think there's a myriad of different approaches. You have to be creative, and you have to experiment to see which of those approaches is going to work. What's the one technology, according to me, that will transform higher education? I think it's the intelligent agents. This idea of personalization and intelligent agents allow you to do engagement, to be nuanced in that engagement. You need only go to any of the social media sites, and those things are completely personalized on the last shopping site you were just at. And so we've got to start doing those types of things where we've got a more holistic view of the student, of their learning, of their success, of what's going on in their lives. And so I think it's that personalization which is going to come through intelligent agents. And as I mentioned during the presentation, intelligent agents exist in at least 2 of the learning management systems. It's there. You just have to turn it on and start using it for that functionality. It is 1:59. They have the least experienced guy in charge, which is me. But they're typing me messages, so I don't know if I'm supposed to flip the slide or what is next, but I'm going to wait for guidance on high as to what we should be doing. I know we're getting close to the end. Are there other questions? Hopefully everyone's enjoyed the session and lots of things to think about.
Hi there, Dr. Carver. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that wonderful presentation that you gave. We're back on now. So like I said, thank you very much for joining us today for EdTalks and the Future of IT in Education hosted by Campus Consortium. A link to today's recording will be posted on Campus Consortium's website and social media sites. We hope today's session has been informative and insightful. And once again, this is Campus Consortium signing off. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Carver. You have a wonderful rest of the day.